Hello everybody, today we're going to be talking about X-Men, the entire franchise, Apocalypse, First Class, Days of Future Past, so on and so forth. If you're looking for an objective review, you've come to the wrong place because I'm biased as hell. And if you're okay with that, let's get this on. I have a special place in my heart for X-Men, specifically the classic comics and the 90s cartoon show. Now, I know the X-Men movies will never ever reach the place where I want it to be. Let's face it, Cyclops' father was a space pirate named Corsair, leader of the Starjammers. And Jean Grey's Phoenix was an eternal force, the Phoenix Force, which was designed to protect the entire universe and safeguard the M'Kraan Crystal. We're never going to see the Starjammers, the Shi'ar Empire, none of that stuff. They've decided to do a grounded, down-to-earth story that most people can relate to, and that's fine. Now, I suffered through the original 3 Fox movies, watching them vaguely reference and misuse all the material they were given. Each one was worse than the last. Then I was introduced to First Class, and you know what? I really liked First Class. It was an introduction that we needed, and although it didn't really start off in the point where I liked, where the X-Men were a team, where they were established, it was a jumping off point. It allowed us to develop the characters like Magneto, for instance, and that way we could get into the war against Magneto. Unfortunately, that never happened, and I'll get into that in a moment. I'd like to also add, for those who have seen the new movie Apocalypse, and all the new X-Men movies, that Mystique's obsession with Magneto was originally an obsession with Apocalypse. She was on his side, not on his side. That has been transferred to Magneto. Now, getting back to this. After the X-Men First Class, which I actually liked because it was a good starting point, a jumping off point, we got to Days of Future Past and they skipped the war with Magneto. Magneto's creation of the race of mutates of the Savage Lands, none of that, no. And they condensed down the entire war with him down to some anecdotes and him being in prison. See, this is all the kind of character development that I was hoping X-Men would have, was basically swept under the carpet. And they replaced it with an arc that's supposed to happen way down the line. But you know what? For all its faults, I found Days of Future Past to be extremely enjoyable. Even if the resistance against Master Mold never happened in the future, they did one thing, which I love so much. They took the original 3 movies that Fox made and said, hey, remember those movies? Yeah, we're going to create a new timeline through our story mechanics that overwrites that. So we're acknowledging that those 3 movies happened, but we're saying they didn't happen now. And that was a very interesting thing because they essentially unified the cinematic universe within X-Men, and that's not something Spider-Man can do, unfortunately, due to the copyright holders. That's not something Fantastic Four can do because of the copyright holders. Marvel done goofed with them. But with X-Men, they were able to erase the 3 Fox movies while still acknowledging them within the canon. So while I dislike Days of Future Past for not properly picking up after First Class and doing the Magneto Wars, I'm okay with it, because overall it was a positive change to the franchise and showed us the future with actual X-Men in it. We saw the Institute there with the X-Men all grown up, leading us to believe that indeed we're going to see them in the future. Then came X-Men Apocalypse. What we saw a grand vision of Apocalypse in the past. That is to say, he was a pharaoh, he had his 4 horsemen behind him, he had all the people bowing to him as a god. It was pretty amazing. And then everything that followed in the movie was quite frankly crap. If the classic X-Men was cheese, Apocalypse was the ham.
I am as far beyond mutants as they are beyond you.
To make the ham and cheese.
I, who am eternal, can never be defeated.
It was a glorious ham.
I know more of this world than you have even dreamed. That is why I must destroy it.
So in Apocalypse, he's awakened after thousands of years, and now wants to conquer the world. Anyone familiar with the classic knows the reason he was gone in the original continuity was he needed to use this regeneration chamber in the pyramids. And that's how he stays alive through the ages, is he just goes to sleep and then wakes up rejuvenated. Also, anyone who's familiar with the originals knows that Apocalypse created the Four Horsemen using machines. He alters them until they're not even human anymore, giving them the powers of death, pestilence, and so on. Well, in the original, he tricked Angel into using his machine in order to get rid of his wings. It was actually a procedure to turn him into the Fourth Horseman, Archangel. In this, however, he uses funky mutant magic where he just kind of points at him and makes things happen, which is arguably lazy as hell. And begs the question, why didn't he do that with other people, enhancing them with metal and things like that? So some tragic stuff happens to Magneto, and he ends up joining Apocalypse to see the world burn. That is something that happened in the original material, don't get me wrong. And in both cases, they kidnap Professor X. However, instead of taking Professor X to the Nexus of Time in order to unmake all reality,
all existence will end.
You see, this movie's Apocalypse just is content with destroying a bunch of buildings. Like, everything humans have built will be destroyed, and we will build a new world in its place. Yeah. You see, Apocalypse wanted to unmake all of creation. We're talking about Earth, we're talking about the stars, we're talking about the entire freaking universe.
Recreating the universe in my own image.
But as I mentioned before, we're not going to see the M'Kraan Crystal, the Shi'ar Empire, the Starjammers, or any of that other stuff, which is hilarious because we've got Guardians of the Galaxy in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, yeah. So it feels like this level of streamlining isn't necessary. Either way, just like the source material, Magneto does betray Apocalypse. And that turning point is Magneto's character progression, moving from the villain archetype to the anti-hero archetype. With the exception of a few relapses here and there, Magneto will ultimately be a force for good within the franchise moving forward. Assuming they stick to the original material anyway. That said, the manner of Magneto's betrayal just comes down to Magneto pelting Apocalypse with a ton of metal. Just a ton of little metal bits. And Apocalypse just consistently burning that metal away somehow. I don't understand it. I just think it's ridiculous. The way it originally went down is when Apocalypse realized he was being betrayed, he grew gigantic. He shot an energy blast at Magneto. Magneto used his EMP disruptor in order to cancel it out. Then he sent him flying like Wile E. Coyote because Apocalypse's body is made of metal. Yeah. Even if Apocalypse's body wasn't made of metal, he's got heavy metal armor on. It's just kind of ridiculous. That's what it is. In the original, Professor X channeled all of the psychic power from all of the psychics from the past, present, and future, gaining control of the axis of time. Doing so, he unmade Apocalypse's existence. In this, however, we have Jean Grey unleashing the Phoenix Force to destroy him. And the ending is simply Magneto and Jean Grey rebuilding the school, and Mystique helping start up the X-Men. Unfortunately, this event starting the X-Men happens way too late in the timeline. I mean, think about it. We've already dealt with Apocalypse, who is supposed to be the climactic battle for the adult X-Men. And in this, they were youngsters, which is weird. Either way, at the ending, we get a cutscene where this man puts all these blood vials into his briefcase, and it says Essex Corp on the briefcase. Because Nathaniel Essex was a scientist in the 19th century who knew Professor X's ancestor. Essex became immortal, and the series would canonically know him as Mr. Sinister. Now, Mr. Sinister manipulates mutant genes. He eventually breeds Jean Grey's clone together with Cyclops in order to create a son. You see, in a dystopian future where armies of Terminators are sent by Apocalypse, a ragtag resistance is led by a time-traveling nemesis of Apocalypse named Cable. Cable is that son of Cyclops and Jean Grey's clone, created by Mr. Sinister. The problem? Well, the movies have already killed off Apocalypse, meaning that Cable, if he's in the story at all, is going to have a massively different role. He's not going to be traveling back in time to stop Apocalypse. Most likely, the villain of the next movie is going to be Mr. Sinister, and it's going to be probably the Mutant Plague, or something like that. There are many possibilities they can pull out of nowhere, or do something entirely unique. Either way, do I recommend X-Men First Class? Do I recommend Days of Future Past? And do I recommend Apocalypse? The answer is yes. They're entertaining action/drama superpower movies. I personally think that each movie has something to offer that the others don't. And that's kind of bad, because I would say that First Class has that initial character building, but I would say that Days of Future Past does not. But instead, Days of Future Past has the drama in it. But I would say Days of Future Past is lacking in the action, but Apocalypse has the action. So again, each movie has something to offer that the others don't. Do I recommend the original 3 Fox movies? Absolutely not. But for those of you who just aren't into comics, don't like manga, don't like any of that stuff, and they just want to sit down and watch a series, but they still want to get that essence of the original X-Men, watch the 90s cartoon.
What do I do? To save my world, I have to help Apocalypse destroy a past one.
At the time of posting this video, it is available for legal streaming on Hulu. If you are interested in X-Men, I recommend popping out the video description. I'm going to have links to all sorts of resources relating to X-Men, the original cartoon series, and the movie. Either way, thank you very much for putting up with my most biased review. And if for some reason you are absolutely insane enough to have actually liked it, go ahead and check the social media links above for more content. This has been Zaric Zhakaron, and y'all have a good one.